Welcome back to another Ezreal video, and today I'm going to focus on the new deck from Unleashed, which is Heedless Ezreal Control. Here, we're going to take the card Heedless Resurrection and really abuse it. The main thing we're going to do is Rasa is a 10 energy and 1 power unit, and Heedless says we can take a unit and turn it into a cheaper or equal unit from our trash. So we're going to play Rasa for 0, and then cast Heedless, and turn Heedless into a Watcher that we discarded previously in the game. This is going to give us a 2 energy Watcher, which we can use to accelerate to a battlefield, kill all the units there, and then potentially Bellows Breath their entire backline, and pass with energy open, ideally for an Arcane Shift that we can use our Watcher trigger again. So, unlike previous Ezreal control decks, instead of fully grinding their opponent out of cards every game, we're really trying to find a point where we can turn the corner and just establish way too much stuff for them to deal with, that we can just kill everything they play for the rest of the game. A couple things I'll call out are in the sideboard for this deck. The main matchups that you really need to think about are Aurora, where we're a slow deck, so they're just going to get to put all of their dragons or barons in play. So you need to make sure you can kill Auroras with the new temporary, Give a Gear temporary card. It's very good. And Downwell is another card that I'm definitely going to be playing, at least in this sideboard. I probably will end up with one main deck if I play this because of how popular Aurora is looking. But it's worth knowing that those cards are extremely important, and I would not leave home without them. The other one I'll call out is Vex Apathetic in the sideboard. It also could definitely be in the main deck, but Lillia is a problem for almost every control deck, and Vex completely shutting down sprites is very important. So I also would not leave home without that card. But all in all, what I wanted to do today is just go through 3 different matchups and show how the deck plays off. Really focusing on the depth of lines in this deck. There's a lot of choices when you can turn any unit into any other unit in your trash. You can fizz back any spell from your trash. So it's a really hard deck to play. You're playing extremely long games. So I would definitely recommend anyone who's showing up to a tournament with this, practice it a little bit beforehand, just to have an idea of your general game plan. Alright, for our first match, we're going to play against a Diana Pit Crew Brew. Just showing off how this deck plays into something that's maybe not as super tuned, but just executing the game plan and walking through it. So here for mulligans, I could keep Card Sharp, or I could send 2 cards back. Usually I want to send 2 cards back to find Purple Seal, because Purple Seal is the best card in the deck. So I do opt to send a Card Sharp back, and I draw another one. I probably should have kept the Card Sharp and just kept 3 cards, because they're all good early game cards. But again, usually I try to send 2 back. So that was a tough mulligan there. Here, they're going to give us an extra gold. Our deck uses gold really well, but doesn't spend it quickly. So the aggro decks especially are often going to take gold from you with Card Sharp. And they have this 1-up, so we're going to send our Card Sharp in knowing they might have Stupefy, which they have, which on this battlefield where you grow a unit when you cast a spell, we can use Stack Deck plus Stupefy to outgrow them. So I'm totally safe. Send the Card Sharp in, cast the Stack Deck before the student dies, obviously. And here, Heedless is the name to take card of the deck, but against something like a Diana that's not drawing cards, I don't need the ridiculous late game that Heedless gives us. So I'm just going to take the Stupefy, make sure I can fill my trash for this Rasa and play it as early as possible. And then here, the wages ended up on our trash because we were walking through some lines. So I'm going to put it back in my hand real quick. But here they're just moving a sprite in and then using their Diana to spend their own wages on our Card Sharp. This means I can't wages to combo against their student. So I'm just going to spend my wages, keep their points down. I don't really need to worry about efficiency. So I'm totally happy spending a wages on a sprite to keep their points down here. Because as Ezreal, I just will have more cards than them at the end of the game into a deck like this. So I'm perfectly happy throwing away resources for points. And then here, we could Ezreal Arcane Shift and start generating value and have a giant hand. But that's not what matters in a matchup like this. What matters is keeping their points as low as possible. So instead, I'm going to use my Shrink spells and my Bellows Breath to spend this gold a little inefficiently on 2 Bellows Breaths, but I'm going to get their units out of play, which is what matters more than efficiency in this kind of matchup. So we get the Predict for Eclipse, which I always have to remember, but Windsinger we just don't need at this point. It's an early game card, and I'm mostly looking for like Fizzes and the true late game powerhouses here. So they're down on cards, and at 3 points only at this point in the game. This is really good for us. So we just need, next turn we'll be able to get our Rasa in play, is what I'm thinking about, and we'll probably turn the corner. So here they have a great draw, which is Pit Crew to Sprite Fountain. Powerful way to take both battlefields. And we find our first purple seal, which is great. So I can just Ezreal away an early game card in Card Sharp. And then top priority is going to be to kill the Pit Crew with this Arcane Shift, which also sets us up really well, as we're only 1 card short of casting Rasa for 0. So this should be our pivot turn. And we'll just see if we can find ways to kill the Poro. It's an Aspirant's Climb game, because that's our game 1 battlefield. So I want to stop them from hitting 7 this turn. 6 off the Sprite Fountain is totally fine, but 7 is a lot scarier. So I'll just Stupefy the Poro and Bellows Breath it, and then it gives me time to cast the stack deck in the meantime. I chose to Stupefy first because I want to know what the random card is before I make my stack deck choice. And yeah, so we cast the Bellows and the Watcher. Or the Rasa, sorry. So now we're perfectly set up. They're going to go to 6, and they have 2 cards in hand. And we've got all the options in our hand. Arcane Shift, Fizz, and Watcher should let us deal with anything. And perfect. They just tap out, put their units in play, and now this should be the game locked up. We can run to battlefields. I should make sure that I don't need the Sprite to target for Arcane Shift, because Arcane Shift can be a little hard to cast sometimes. But I don't. So in this case, I know I can Fizz, Shrink the Hui with Eclipse, and then Fizz Bellows. So that's the plan here. I don't need the Arcane Shift. I can save that on defense. But we see Bellows on top, so I opt to go for a more value line, which is a little more shields down. It doesn't let us keep the Arcane Shift, which is a mistake. So I should have still gone for the sack a bunch of runes to repeat Bellows and have 3 up, so I could Arcane Shift a Watcher they draw off the top potentially. But instead, I tap low, and it's largely fine. Again, they're only at 6. We're not in danger of dying, but they do top deck a Watcher here, so they get to kill our whole battlefield, and we have to work a little bit harder. But we have our own Watcher to send back, and then at this point, unless they keep chaining Watchers for the next 3 turns, there's really nothing they can do. And they don't, so our Watcher plus Rasa's hold here, and the game is over. For our next match, we're going to play against just the best of Atlanta mid-range Draven. No new cards on their end, but really focusing on the complexity of the lines on our end and how it plays into a mid-range matchup. You can see I'm thinking about which of these purple power cards to send back. I decided to keep the Heedless because there's only 2 in the deck, and against something like a Forerunner deck, I am going to want the cheap Watcher at some point in the game. So I want to make sure I have access to a Heedless. I don't want 1 on the bottom and 1 somewhere else. So Card Sharp, turn 1, pretty standard. They're going to take a gold, because like I said, they're going to use it immediately, and we might take some time to use the second one. And then here we have to think, do we want to trade the Card Sharp with the Rek'Sai and bounce the fan, or bounce the Rek'Sai and eat the fan and get bounced back? I opt to eat the fan, just making sure we keep the Card Sharp for later. I think that's pretty reasonable. They're not like too far ahead on points, and we do have a pretty good start, just putting lots of 3-might units in play. And then I have to choose between playing second Card Sharp and Ezreal. I already have gold, so I don't need the Card Sharp in play immediately, so I opt to play the Ezreal just to make sure I know what cards are in my hand. Especially because I know that this Watcher is going to be in the trash instead of my hand. You don't really want to accelerate Watcher from hand in these matchups because it puts you pretty shields down. And then they have a Forerunner. So now I just have to think about how to deal with this Forerunner. I want to be triggering Ezreal every turn, because that's how we fill our trash for this Rasa and start getting to our late game. So I'm going to send the card sharp out because I don't have any proactive damage spells for the Forerunner. So I need them to come at me so I can do damage with units. And then I'm going to use the second card sharp to get up to 6, just to make it more likely that I win this fight. Again, if they spend, multiple axes to win, or a gust or any type of interaction like that, I'll be totally fine, because I am digging through my deck. The Eclipse gets to predict, so we get to see 3 new cards this turn. And the turn after, we can dig an extra, 2. So we're pretty well set up. We should be able to find an answer to this Forerunner. And I just want to make them invest resources in running over this battlefield, or they can send the Forerunner to the other one, and then we just get to run home and they don't get cards. Okay, so they send the Forerunner in with an axe. One of the benefits of card sharping here up to 6 is that they have to act first. So now I just know I'm going to Eclipse, Stupefy, and see what they have. It turns out they don't have a second axe, which I think is good for us and all. But their Forerunner is going to die, and then they have the Rek'Sai they can accelerate that we know about and put an axe on. So they are going to kill our battlefield. They are going to draw 1 card this turn. That's okay. As long as we're going and drawing cards and filling our trash, we're progressing towards our strong late game. And so it's okay to give them a card as long as we're able to cast multiple spells and put a bunch of cards in the trash this turn. So like I said, the Rek'Sai I expected is coming down here, equipped with the Spinning Axe. So they're going reasonably far down on runes. They are using the gold we gave them from Card Sharp efficiently. But this is great for us. We're building up a rune base, and they're having to spend resources to put the pressure on. So we'll be able to capitalize on that soon and really turn the corner. So I'm going to stack deck, and now I have to deal with this Rek'Sai. So I've got Arcane Shift, and then +3 damage. So I really want to think about taking this Wages, but I opt to take the Arcane Shift because it's just a little bit more powerful and making sure they'll never run me out of cards, because I did give them a card off the Draven. Not really sure which one is correct here. And either way, I think we probably would have been able to grind them out. Notably, I know I can already deal with the mech tokens with Starcrossed plus Windsinger. That answers both of them very cleanly with just the Starcrossed. So I just need to get this Rek'Sai out of play now. And because I have the Rasa, I know I'm safe, where even if I miss on damage, I can Heedless the Watcher into play off this Rasa, and the Rek'Sai will die to the damage on it. So that part's totally fine. So I'm okay to discard this Arcane Shift and try to find a better answer to do the rest of the damage. So here I'll opt to Fizz for an Eclipse, because we did draw that better answer. And now I have the second Heedless. So I'm going to keep it, draw it off the Ezreal. And now our hand is just full of late game. I don't have an Ezreal or a Fizz in the trash, so leaving up one of these Heedlesses for now isn't that important. I'm just going to fire off the stack deck and tank. Second Seal is pretty good. All these cards are great. I opt to take the Seal just to make sure I'm not going to run out of runes in the late game, because our hand, again, is so strong in the late game with these 2 Heedlesses. I know I won't be running out of cards anytime soon. And this just shows, this was a pretty long turn, and we had a lot of choices. And so if you want that in your deck, this is a great deck for you. And if you don't want to have, 6 to 8 game actions where you had to decide which directions to go, you probably don't want to play this deck. And that's okay. There are other decks for you. Not every deck is for everyone in this game. There's a lot of diversity. So here, they have Falling Star for our units, which is kind of rough because we don't have another 3 to Heedless back in loop. But we at least have the Ezreal in our yard now, so we're well set up. And like I said, because they didn't put a unit in play, we're great. We just Starcross this Windsinger back to our hand, bouncing 1 token, and replay the Windsinger, bouncing the other, draw off Ezreal. And now we get our first Heedless, so they're going to Axe to try to save from Windsinger. But I know I can just put Watcher in play, and this is why I had the Rasa down first. So I put Watcher in play, trigger Watcher, and this is all in response to the Windsinger trigger. So this mech token that got bumped up to a 6 is now a 3, and the Windsinger trigger will resolve successfully. Which is, a great demonstration of the power of these Watchers. I could have accelerated and taken a point. It's just not that important, so I didn't want to discard the rune. I probably should have, because points are good, and you can start putting pressure on when you're at higher points. But I opted not to, and it's totally fine to play purely defensively in this deck, because you will just run them out of stuff. And here I've got Star-Crossed, so I don't want to leave Windsinger at a battlefield, so I'm just going to Star-Crossed the Windsinger after I take a point, bounce their guy, using the Stupefy to draw an extra card. And now we're really well set up for late game still. They're at 5, and it's an Aspirant's Climb game, so we're very well set up, but they do have 6 cards, so if they start to, slowly deploy units, we have to be a little careful that they don't still try to grind us out with, like, Forerunners. But accelerating Kaisa, they're putting themselves down on runes, and I'm actually going to just use these Bella's Breaths. I know that I have this Heedless that can always be a Fizz and just keep me going, and I just want to make sure they don't have the extra cards there. So, yeah, now we draw this Fizz. I have to think about what this Fizz is going to be. Generally speaking, though, Stack Deck is a great card to cast. It'll mean the Stack Deck is the card that goes back, so it's the most flexible card when you get back to 15 cards deep in your deck, which we absolutely are going to do this game. And we find Morbid Return. So I want this Morbid Return to turn into a Rasa, and I could actually pick up a Fizz and Fizz back the Morbid Return, just to get an extra Fizz in play. But in this case, it's better to have the Fizz in my trash. So I'm just going to Morbid Return the Rasa, play the Rasa to a battlefield, and save the Fizz in my trash so that I can Heedless my Fizz at base into a Fizz, cast a Star-Crossed, returning Fizz and their unit for whatever they play, and then that Fizz can also come down and play another Star-Crossed, because I think I played 2, or it can be a Stack Deck and dig me to another Star-Crossed if there's still 2 left in my deck. But either way, we've essentially locked up this game where if they're not able to play multiple units a turn, even without our draw step, I can bounce 3 units pretty easily with this setup, and we're just going to hold up to 8, and the game is over. Well, I showed off some of the good matchups, and now I'm going to show off what I think is probably the worst matchup for most of these control decks, which is Lillia. So, we saw that Heedless can grind people out, but against Lillia, they're really good against slow strategies. And so here, I'm going to send back 2 power costing cards, because I know I need as strong of an early game as possible. I want to find seals, and I want to find my card sharps and units. And unfortunately, my only unit play is Ezreal, but I do want to get on the board as much as possible in this matchup. Because they're very, very good at scoring 2 points a turn without investing units. Their Legend making a Sprite that scores a point is really good against us. So yeah, we're going to card sharp, and here, as usual, they're going to take the extra gold, because they think they can use it faster than we can. This matchup, I'm not sure if it's right. It always depends. And here, unfortunately, we have to take one of these Watchers. I know I'm going to need a Watcher at some point in these matchups most of the time. And so I'm going to take one just so I can put it in my trash and have access to it. Because seeing both and putting both on the bottom really limits our ability to choose between different plays. And here they've got a really good start, though. So they're taking 2 points by moving Lillia, activating Legend, and then playing another Lillia at base. So I really want to get rid of both these Lillias if I can. And I do have the Bellows that can repeat. But they have this hidden card. So I know the hidden card in Lillia is almost always the 2 that swaps a unit with a temporary unit and draws a card. It's very, very good. And so I'm just going to Stupefy first, because I know the Lillia at base is one I'm going to target with Bella's Breath. That's for sure happening. The other Lillia might end up somewhere else, or have weird things happening to it. So I'll start with one at base, then I'll move the card sharp in, force the hidden card, and I'm okay losing the card sharp. I really just need my trash full to get Rasas down, because the 3s don't play very good defense, but the 6 does. And we do the perfect Fizz, so I can Fizz back, Stupefy, draw 2, have both Lilias shrunk, and Bellows them both. So that's a great catch-up. There's a decent chance they'll have to invest a lot of energy in taking both these battlefields here, and they won't be able to build up their board. So I'm quite happy with fully clearing the base. But Lillia is one of the few decks that's really, really good at taking both battlefields from literally nothing in play. So we'll see what they have, but I opted not to play defense with the Ezreal. I think it's pretty defensible if I do play defense with the Ezreal, because it makes it less likely they take both battlefields. But they're almost always just spending like a discipline to do it. So I didn't really want to lose the Ezreal in case I needed repeats or Accelerate Watcher. And yeah, they had the Sprite Burst, take both battlefields, so we're just going to try to get the student out of play. I'm really hoping they have a Defy for the Bellows, because I think the student is not what matters. Next turn, they'll have, 10 runes, which is easily enough to accelerate 2 units. There's tons of ways to make sprites in this deck, so like they usually won't need the student to score both battlefields. But I'm going to try to kill it, and we'll see what they do. Yeah, looks like they opt to let it through. We get to draw a card, which is a Morbid Return, which is strong. We'll need more Rossas than we have. And now I have to just think about how much mana I'm leaving up this turn. So I could Windsinger the Sprite and, run out the Fizz, make them have something. But I opt to go for the more all-in line this turn, because I don't want them to have 12 runes the turn they're fighting. It's probably stronger to wait. But by running out the Fizz, I put the Fizz in my trash, so I'm set up for Heedless, where the Fizz can come back to play. And I can take the Ezreal into the battlefield and play the Rasa. So we're pretty strong. I'm expecting like an unchecked power. Unfortunately, they have a Singularity. But it's likely they won't take both battlefields this turn. And I was really hoping I'd be able to set up with this Heedless and protect this battlefield. But they have the Defy, which puts them on basically having Sprite Fountain or Bust this turn. So we're sacking Rasa to try to put in Fizz so that the Ezreal stays in play. Then I'll Windsinger the Ezreal back when they defy my Heedless. And unfortunately, they do have the Sprite Fountain, so I'm not set up to defend this battlefield. Which is pretty rough because they went to 5, so now they're back on odd for the Aspirant's claim to get to 9. So we didn't actually buy a turn there. But they did invest a lot of runes, so maybe we can try to capitalize by getting another Rasa. And so I Morbid Return back the Rasa, play it for 0, and then play Ezreal discarding this Watcher. Like I said, it's really hard to play defense with a Watcher. If I can find another Heedless and fight through a Defy with the Starcross plus the Heedless, I'm in a pretty decent spot. Because I'll be able to be tricky and like maybe run them out of cards. But they've activated their Legend so many times and gotten points out of it that they're just very ahead on cards at this point. This is really showcasing that I think these Lillia decks are built insanely strongly against control. The Singularity and Unchecked Power are like the perfect cards to stop someone from holding against you. So I really have to contort my game plan here. And yeah, so they're up to 7. So now I know I need to play defense every turn or I'm going to lose. And I also really want to get this Lillia out of play. So I'm going to put as much power as I can justify at a battlefield, but I need to make sure that I don't just lose to unchecked power. So I'm going to opt to leave as much as reasonable at home, which means I'll leave 12 of the battlefield, and then I'll leave the Ezreal and the Rasa, the second Rasa, at home. That sets me up reasonably well where I can try to alternate which battlefield I'm holding on and have, a lot of power at both every turn, so that I'm scoring points every turn and going up by 2, so we progress toward ending the game. And I only need to fade, 2, 3 more turns here to stabilize. So we're in a decent spot. If they don't have a counterspell this turn, we'll hold this turn for sure. And to deal with 12 is pretty rough for them. But they do have the Heart of Dark Ice, which puts us in a really rough spot, where now they're going to basically threaten to eat Rasa every single turn for free. So I need to start finding things. I will have enough cards, like the Starcrossed is really good. If it does resolve, I should be able to get enough traction. And I think I make a mistake here. I think I'm supposed to actually bounce the Ezreal, because my hand's a little meh, and I need to find spells. But in other matchups, you really want to bounce the Fizz here. So I opt to bounce the Fizz. But I should have bounced the Ezreal because it would have let me dig for more spells to play on their turn. Because it's a Lillia deck, they don't really have units at their base, so casting spells on my own turn doesn't do a lot with Fizz. I'd rather just refill my hand. And yeah, here they recognize that going to 8 doesn't really matter, so they're just going to try to trade resources with us, send their Sprite at our Fizz, and trade. And I really just want, like, Heedlesses or Arcane Shift, perfect card here. And they didn't have a counter last turn, so they probably don't have a counter yet. So I'm just going to run Rasa out and play Fizz to Battlefield. I maybe shouldn't have even done that, because I just need to cast spells. And with the stack deck, I'm now on 1 fewer rune. I'm on 5 instead of 6, which means I can't cast 2 good spells. But it is what it is. We've been, pressured a little tight this game, and we have to find something. So maybe I'm supposed to leave the Rasa out even, and just make it harder for us to lose. But this matchup's really hard, and I haven't quite solved it from without having trump cards, I haven't solved it. Which, you can make this matchup a lot better with Vex Apathetic or Baron. It's pretty hard for them to conquer 3 battlefields in a turn. And the Baron itself is hard for them to attack into. And Vex Apathetic obviously answers all Sprite tokens forever. But here, we're hoping they still don't have a counterspell, so I'm just going to shift the Sprite token. If they let it happen, I can shift the Fizz, cast an Eclipse on their Sprite at home, and it'll buy me this turn. And then I just need to draw from the card I draw, and the Fizz I can stack deck the next turn. Find like a Heedless or a Star-Crossed to buy myself another turn. But unfortunately here, I believe they did find the Lilting Lullaby, which, will tell them that we're fully shields down and there's nothing we can do. So we're going to lose this game. But, we did have moves for the whole game. And I probably made a mistake by trying to hold too early. So the matchup's definitely playable. It's tight, and you'll want to be aware that Lillia is a really hard matchup. But overall, hopefully this showed off, the power of the deck and what you can do. Now that you've seen the deck in action, I want to go through and talk about where I plan on taking the deck next to try, and where the real flexibility lies in the list. So at its core, this is a really, really synergy-based deck. You're not going to change that many cards in the deck. I think you need almost all the gold generation. The seals are extremely important. The Star-Crossed Fizz package, you're not getting rid of. The Watchers, Rasas. So a lot of the cards are fixed. Like at least 30 of the cards I wouldn't change. But there definitely is room to make the deck your own. And so first, let me talk about the cards that I find the most flexible and I'm the most likely to cut. First up, Bella's Breath. Specifically the third Bella's Breath is an extremely important card in Ezreal, works really well with Ezreal Prodigy, and helps sweep up a lot of backlines, especially as Watcher. But in this list, we only have room for 2 Eclipses in terms of actual shrink effects, so it's hard to deal with real units with Bella's Breath, which means you definitely are allowed to go down to 2. You'll really want to find one every game that you Watcher, because the combination of Bella's plus Watcher is really what this deck is going for. But it's definitely justifiable to trim one. I probably won't be, because I don't think I need the space yet, but it's on my list. Next up, Ezreal Prodigy. This one's a little counterintuitive, but from playing the games, I think the deck can get away with only the one Ezreal in the champion zone. It does feel like you want multiple Ezreals to do the Heedless loop, but there's some other units with the same cost you can play, and the second Ezreal is probably going to be worse than the first of many other cards, just because you lose the flexibility there, where we always have an Ezreal. If we want, there's always an Ezreal in our trash that we can bring back. And from playing the games, I don't really bring back Ezreal that often. Fizz is way more important. So I'm probably going to cut these just to find more variability. Last up, Morbid Return. This card is really only here for the games that go to decking. Morbid Return, Fizzback, Morbid Return means you will never run out of cards in your deck. But that's probably not what this format's about. So I'm going to start without it. now that I've played the deck enough and I know that it can actually close before you get to decking. All right, so those are the cards I look to cut right now, at least. And let's talk about the cards that I'm looking to add. The first one from playing those games especially is one Annie. It's, a card from the box sets that is easy to overlook, and Annie plays it as its champion unit kind of begrudgingly, but it is a good card there, and there's a lot of power in this. So Fizz lets you cast spells for cheaper, but it does make you cast the spell immediately. And there are points in the game where you have enough energy, you just want the extra flexibility of actually putting the spell in your hand so that you can use it later. Especially Starcrossed, this is actually infinite with 2 purple seals in Starcrossed. You can just pay 7 energy every turn and bounce a Forerunner. And it gives you a lot more flexibility against like a Mind Splitter if they're taking your important sideboard cards. So I think I want an Annie. The next one, some folks in the Riftbound Community Discord found, which is Cemetery Attendant. I think this is overall a better card than Morbid Return by a pretty wide margin, because having that 3-might body with the correct power cost for the deck is amazing. So I'm going to play this instead of one of the Ezreal Prodigies and see how it feels. Because again, I want the flexibility of having different cards I can Heedless around, just so that I have more choices. Next up is Downwell, and this is an Aurora card. I think Aurora is picking up, and I want to respect it, and Downwell is the card to respect it. Gear Hate isn't really main deckable, but by playing a Downwell, it means even if they have multiple Auroras and get really, really far ahead, get everything in play, and even if they Mind Splitter our Downwell, we can Annie it back, and then cast it, and reset the board to a point where we could win using our Rossas that are very, very cheap, i.e. 0 energy. So just by adding a Downwell, you give yourself outs to the Aurora deck popping off, which, if Aurora is pretty popular, is very important. And lastly, the final card I'm going to try including in the main deck is Baron Nashor. I haven't been very impressed by Baron in these control decks because your opponent usually just has units they can run it over with. But specifically because the problem with this deck I foresee is Lillia, and I don't think Vex Apathetic is very good in this main deck because we don't have the density of Eclipses to play combat. I'm going to go with the Baron and try it out. Just by adding the 3rd battlefield, the Lillia matchup gets a lot better, where they actually struggle to make 3 sprites a turn over multiple turns. They have their sprite bursts that can do it, but as long as we're killing their units, they will run out of cards that are capable of winning the game when there are 3 battlefields, which means we'll be able to, win at our own pace. So I'm going to try Baron just to fetch that matchup, and I think it will also make the control matchups better. Similarly, the Downwell kicks in, where if an Ezreal control deck shows up with their own Barons, I have a Downwell to deal with it, as well as just my own Watchers. So I think the Baron should play well, but time will tell. And those are my changes. Here's the deck list that I plan on playing next on screen now. I'll have a link to this in the description below, as well as the deck list I was playing in the videos. And I hope this gives you a good start to build your own version of Heedless Ezreal Control. And if it does, let me know how it goes in the comments.